So good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Diversity in Wholesale breakfast briefing this morning. I'm really excited to have Lana Bhikha here with us today, the Joint Managing Director of Woods Foodservice. So Lana's going to be speaking about how to give and receive feedback effectively. Lana's journey started out really interesting, her career journey. She started stacking shelves in Tesco and joined Woods Foodservice, where through working really hard and being determined, she earned her position as joint managing director. One of the things that's really helped Lana is being able to give and receive feedback really honestly. It's helped her to build trust with her colleagues, but also to make sure that the business itself is in tip-top condition. So just to clarify, Lana's not a expert in feedback. She doesn't have any qualifications in it, but today she's going to share some of the experiences that have really helped her in her career. So thanks very much, Lana. I'm now going to hand over to you.
Thank you for having me, Edit. So just a little bit about myself first. So I joined Woods at 21 years old, coming straight out of university. I'd worked in retail whilst I was studying, and kind of stumbled across my job at Woods by chance, really. One of my friends worked here at the time and asked if I'd like a job in customer service. So I started with Woods as an order taker at the height of Christmas in 2013. And obviously after Christmas comes our quiet time in January and February. So I very quickly found that I had quite a lot of time on my hands to start getting involved in other areas of the business, and sort of making myself busy, really. So that's when I started cross-training and looking to learn the stock replenishment side of the business, and getting involved in purchasing as well, which is where most of my my experience in the company is, on the commercial side of the business. But we do a lot of cross training at Woods, and I still continue to do that at the moment. And that's where a lot of our feedback comes from learning different areas of the business. So at the moment, I'm still doing a finance course to try to sort of gain more knowledge in that area and know that I'm well equipped enough to help run a business the size that we are now. And once I've done that, I'll be moving on to logistics, which I've not spent a lot of time in. So I think I'm going to be chucked out on a few routes to make sure that I'm able to do sort of every job that we have here at Woods. And that's how that's sort of what equips me to be able to manage the rest of the team and understand the pressures that each of their departments have as well. So yeah, I've taken on a lot on board, a lot of feedback on the way, which I'm hoping to share a bit with you today on. So that's probably it in terms of my career so far. It's been quite manic, and obviously we've had COVID in between as well. So during that time, Woods learnt a lot about itself, and that although we're kind of a one-stop shop for a lot of our customers, we have kind of got all of our eggs in one basket. So I've learned to diversify. And it was at a time as well where I'd taken time out of the business to have children. So I became a mum during COVID, which was difficult. And at the same time, the business was struggling quite a bit. And we invested in a new chilled warehouse for our new fresh produce offering, which we continue to learn more and more about each day. And that's growing really well at the moment. So, but there's lots to learn there, lots to learn. And we've had conversations over the last couple of days as well about a few of us getting out onto the market and really getting to grips with that too. So I suppose at Woods, we kind of really encourage learning as much as you can about the business and being as valuable as you can. And we've got lots of employees here and staff members that are also on that kind of like learning journey as well. And constructive feedback for them is a massive thing that they welcome, which is really good. So Should
Brilliant. Thanks, Lana. Yeah. Let's move on
I get
to
on to the rest
your
of it?
tips. Yes, please. Thank you for that.
So let me share my screen. Sorry, one moment. I'm hoping that's the right one, Elliot. Is that the right one? Yep.
Yeah, that's the one.
Perfect. So as Elliot explained, I'm not an expert in giving feedback at all, and everything I've learned is from experience. And I've probably been given the same constructive feedback myself over and over again. And part of being able to learn and grow and achieve in each of the roles that I've had at Woods, I've had to take on board a lot of constructive feedback, probably more than everyone else put together. And I welcome it because it helps me grow as a person. It's the best thing for the business, really. So what is constructive feedback? It should be a type of feedback that offers specific and actionable advice to help employees improve, that is focused and solutions orientated. So it's about results rather than biased thoughts on an employee's characteristic. So it should never feel like a personal attack on somebody, and it should definitely come from sort of like their KPIs and objectives that they're given in the first place. And we make sure that everybody at Woods are kind of given those in their reviews, and I'll go on to that a little bit in a little while. But yes, it shouldn't be a critical thing on someone's characteristics. It should definitely be about their performance, and it's normally about probably a particular issue that's occurred. It should be a tool to improve the standard of work. So there should definitely be actions that are given to the member of staff or the team to be able to work on from the constructive feedback you've given them, and done in sort of like a mentor and coaching way, and being given sort of objectives in how they're going to help improve their performance. So yeah, they should always have next steps provided in how they're going to achieve that, and maybe as well that they want to be a part of those objectives and give some suggestions on how they can improve too. So at Woods, we think that the feedback we're given is really important because sometimes our staff may be slightly nervous and have never received feedback like that before, and in as much depth and detail as we give it. It should be able to aid them personally, to help them with their progression plans. So everyone here at Woods is on either a progression plan or more of a capability plan. If they're underperforming, how can we help them achieve the level of expectation that we expect from them? And if they're overperforming, they will also be on a development plan to sort of take next steps to the next level. So we have a lot of our team are doing external training, which we're helping to provide, which the FWD also help with grants on, if anybody didn't know that before, because we've only recently found that out ourselves, and that's become really beneficial to us because we can claim back quite a lot from that. It encourages open conversations about performance, and will open up a conversation for employees to be able to give their feedback to you too. So you can always find out from your employees after having given them feedback. They may feel more comfortable to be able to give you feedback on how they think you've dealt with the situation too, or how they could have been more supported in a situation. It also creates a level of respect between you and the employee, or you and your other colleagues, if you're able to talk openly to them about the pressures that each of your departments are facing, and contributes to a positive work culture. So ultimately, it should help drive more positive results.
Lana?
Yes?
Can we take a question?
Yes, we can. Sorry.
No, fine. Julie, would you like to share your question? You can speak.
I can't hear Julie because she's got her mic on mute.
Here we go. Ask to unmute. Julie, if you take yourself off mute, you can share your question. Otherwise, just pop it in the chat box. Lana, if you carry on, I'll let you know when
no
Julie's
problem.
ready.
As well, I think what we've learned at Woods is that if people struggle to take on board constructive feedback, they're often not able to give it to their teams either, and won't always create a positive working environment. So I think it's helped us when we've been structuring our teams, especially after COVID, where we had a lot of changes, because those kinds of individuals probably won't work out in the long run. Obviously, we take on board any feedback that we're given in those situations too. But I'll go on in sort of my feedback on customer feedback, as to how sometimes you just kind of have to understand that a situation's not always the best one to be in, and you're both probably best going your separate ways. So being able to receive feedback. So I've split up what I'm going to be speaking about into being able to receive feedback from managers, from colleagues, and from customers or suppliers. So from managers, in our reviews at Woods, we always have quite an in-depth sort of detailed document that goes along with our reviews, which are done quarterly. But our team also have one-to-ones with their managers, most of the time monthly or bi-weekly. So they have quite a lot of time to be able to feed back to their managers too, and make sure that our team feel well supported enough. But in their reviews, they'll be given feedback on their performance against their KPIs that they were provided with either at the beginning of the financial year or quarter. They'll be given examples of where they've really excelled in their role, areas of improvement to work on, which is our main sort of piece of constructive feedback we will give them. And then they're also given the platform to respond as well. So I think the important thing there is that the feedback given to them is based on their KPIs and how they've performed, and we're quite analytical with the KPIs that we provide our team with, and making sure that we're also not asking too much of them either. So they're always manageable but challenging at the same time. So we always make sure that we document the feedback, and being able to let the employee give their response to just shows that we're invested in taking on board feedback too. So what we kind of expect from our teams when we're giving them feedback is that they're humble about it, and I think that's probably the reason why I've progressed as well as I have at Woods. I've taken on board every bit of feedback I've been given and worked on it, and not seen it as a personal attack. It's a way that I could have performed performed better, and it would have had a more positive impact on the business if I'd performed in a different way or done something slightly differently. So to be humble, and the person giving you the feedback is often more experienced than you are, regardless of their age or how long they've worked in the industry, or they're in their role because they've been trusted to be placed in that role, and that they're going to make the decisions based on being the best ones for the business. So you may come across some defensiveness as a manager, but But I think the biggest piece of feedback that I could probably give is to make sure you're humble in the feedback you're being given, and allow the person giving you that feedback to fully explain to you why. And if at first you feel a bit disheartened by it, there's probably good reasoning behind why you've been given that feedback. And if you give it some time, you're probably likely to see those results yourself. Also, that the person giving you the feedback has definitely given a lot of time to that, and especially if they are giving it to you in a formal way where they've written up a document for you, which I suggest that it is done in a more formal capacity every few months, because you can look back on that and understand how far somebody's come since you last spoke to them, and how well they've accepted and taken on that feedback. Also, a manager won't have overlooked all of the positive results you've had either. So I think one of the best things that I did in my early part of my career at Woods was sort of got my head down and made myself busy, and kept out of any sort of office politics or whatever. We had a big restructure when I first joined Woods. So kept my head down and got on with anything that I was given. And I might not necessarily have received praise for every single thing I did, but my performance was being noticed. And also in the examples of excellence that we would write up in a review, it's sort of your constructive feedback sandwich, where you've got your examples of excellence where you can improve, and then sort of an overall response to an employee's performance too. So you may have been doing lots of things on your KPI and objective list and done them well, but if you can't take on board feedback and understand why you're being given it, it's only to kind of help you progress. And also that you don't have to be a yes person to take on board constructive feedback. So although I've taken it on board, I can still have conversations with Darren, who I report to, and challenge him on different ideas as well. So I think it encourages us to both be open in our working environment, and sort of come to more joint decisions about how we're going to take the company forward. And I've already kind of touched on this point, but constructive feedback, if it's constructive, it won't feel personal anyway. And again, everyone's on board to take on praise, but can be defensive with constructive actions. And you can't always be given a pat on the back, and you should be open to seeing where you're going wrong. And you might not actually be able to see it for yourself, because sometimes you need to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. So being able to take on constructive feedback from colleagues. At Woods, we've got a book that is sort of like our Bible, really, and it's called Black Box Thinking, by an author called Matthew Said. And it's a book on how problems occurred, and sort of like big problems that you get in sort of aviation, in medical care, and how the team or the person that was dealing with the problem at the time didn't sort of stop to think and find the root cause of the issue. So I'm sure that most of you know that a black box is in a plane, and if a plane was to crash, it's the black box that is found and investigated and analysed. And that's what we do at Woods. Any problem we have, we get to the root cause of it, analyse it, and make sure that it doesn't happen again. And that can be for the smallest thing, a picking error, anything. So I think by trying to always make sure that we're performing to the best of our ability as a team, and really drilling down into every error that we have, we encourage a sort of an open environment for people to constructively advise each other on how potentially issues could have been resolved better. We also have a managers meeting each week where our senior team gets together, and we do speak about positive actions and outcomes. But what we really want to focus on is how we can do better as a team. So how I kind of go about the managers meeting is that everybody speaks before I do, and I'm hoping that all of the managers around the table have noticed the problems that I've noticed in their weekly reports that they provide, on our CRM reports that we run, which our customer service team manage when they're speaking to our customers. I'm hoping that they've been able to notice all of the issues that have happened over the week, and come up with really positive solutions on how we're going to overcome them as a team. And being able to openly discuss all of our own errors or problems in our policies or procedures, we're able to sort of hold each other accountable for our performance as well, and understand how it impacts others. And it's also really important to say as well that we encourage all of our management teams to also cross-train in each other's positions, so that they can understand what's feasible and what's not as well, in terms of what they're asking from each other. So they're really encouraged to openly question why something hasn't been followed through, or basically we're just trying to make sure every day that we're improving our service to the customer. And I think they're all very much of an understanding that not one of the pieces of feedback that they'll give each other is to have a dig at each other and to throw anyone under the bus. It's to ensure that tomorrow we have a more successful day in terms of the level of service that we provide against the day before. Sorry, I'm just going to quickly have a sip of my coffee.
Thank you, Lana.
Oh, because I'm talking and I'm kind of getting a bit of a dry throat. So taking on board constructive feedback from our suppliers and customers. Oh, I'm not keeping up with my slides.
Lana, we have a question, if now's a good time for a question. So Jess Crawshaw has asked, I'd love to know if you think there are any really useful ways to respond to feedback. For example, in a review, you've suggested lots of feedback from all levels. Would you suggest meeting individuals to follow up, or emails? Especially if you don't necessarily agree with all the feedback or don't understand it.
I'd definitely say if you don't understand it, that you need to ask for more clarification. It could be that you've had sort of a more conversational piece of feedback given to you. The feedback that I give with our performance reviews to us, I do our senior team reviews, and then our managers conduct the teams that they work with. They conduct all of their reviews. I will always have a more conversational version of the review with that member of the team, but I will always follow up with written communication. And I always expect their feedback to be clarified in writing as well, so that we're both definitely on the same page about it. I think if there's reasoning in why you don't agree with the feedback, that there should be because it should be results based that you're being given the feedback on, rather than on a personal level. You should be able to kind of understand why, if you're being given the feedback clearly enough. And I think that's probably the key, is that it needs to be clear, and examples need to be given to you of where you could have performed better. And I'll come on to explain, I think that it needs to be very prompt after something, like not necessarily wait until a quarterly review to have this conversation. That's why we meet as a team every week. But I actually expect the department leads to have smaller meetings between themselves on a more frequent basis than that, if there's something that they need to deal with between themselves. But I do think if you're given that information clearly enough as to why, why something could have been done better, then the feedback should be quite, what's the word? My brain fog is going to come in now. You should be able to sort of comprehend with it. If you don't agree with it or you need further clarification on it, I would definitely ask for a follow-up. We kind of use it's an app called the Monday app for all of our actions from any of our meetings as well. Also to make sure that people are accountable for what they've been assigned to do in the different meetings. And I think it's important to make sure that you're keeping a record of the feedback you've been given so that you can provide your leaders with information on how you have managed to perform. And I think it's important as well, the communication from the employee to the lead or the manager, that needs to be constant rather than as a response to constructive feedback given. I think that can sometimes come across in a basically be proactive in clarifying where you've managed to achieve rather than it being a response to the feedback that you've been given. I think, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Lana. And Tracy is asking, how do you develop and support your teams through the transition on giving feedback both ways?
Right, so a lot of our team have worked their way, I think about, hang on, how many of it there? I think about 2/3 of our senior team are people that have begun their careers in the same way that I did at Woods, as a junior member of the team, and have kind of been invited to get more and more involved, even if they're not sort of at that level yet, in terms of managing people, sort of starting off with a smaller amount of responsibility and then building upon that. But we've also just introduced our new HR manager, who we're really hoping to sort of take us to the next level. And for her, rather than to be focusing on your normal sort of HR manager duties with sort of admin, recruitment and things like that, we're really looking for her to sort of lead our team in performance and aid them with their managerial skills, basically, whether that means helping them with sort of like an external course or basically just making sure that they're exposed to as many issues as they possibly can be, so that they're constantly learning, and definitely to make sure that they're outside of their comfort zone too, and having those kind of conversations with their, I think as well, our management team are so used to having that constructive feedback themselves that the more they get it, the more they're willing to be able to try to receive it and try to give it themselves as well to their team. And I think definitely at the beginning, when one of our managers will be new to managing a team, they'll definitely have that very close support from somebody more senior to make sure that the messages are being translated in the correct way as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Lana.
So yeah, I think one really important thing is that we wouldn't sort of disregard any feedback that we're being given by our customers and our suppliers. If a supplier said to us, "Oh, you're missing a really good product in your range and your competitors are doing really well off of it," you wouldn't kind of turn a blind eye to it. So I kind of see that as that you should be taking on board any kind of feedback that you're given from any of your colleagues or others in the industry, because that's in your best interest. It's in your best interest to stop that line, or it's in your best interest to take on board that feedback that a customer's given in a survey, for instance. Maybe their delivery's not, that their delivery window isn't correct, or they think they're receiving their delivery late. You wouldn't just not do anything about that piece of information that you're given. You'd work on it and you'd take action on it. So I think that needs to kind of be the same when you're taking on constructive feedback from your leaders. you wouldn't disregard a customer or supplier. So why would you try to disregard information that is going to help you progress? And then being able to give feedback. So I think before you give feedback to your teams, you need to try to look at the bigger picture and understand why an employee may have performed in such a way. Were they under a lot of pressure that day? Did they have the tools that you thought they had to do their job well? Do they need more support? Always look at the reasons why before you're going to give feedback, and make sure that it's fair before making a judgment on their performance. You need to be specific and use exact examples. So getting that clarity and confirmation across to the team about what you need from them. And I think the follow-up actions from that help you to explain the situation better. Using your constructive feedback sandwich. So the examples of excellence and the areas of improvement are really important, that in making sure that they don't feel it's sort of a nagging and an attack on them. And also making sure that you document the feedback so that you can revert back to it in the future. Something I always done, the first thing I would do when I would get my KPIs and objectives for the year or the quarter, is get them into a document, something that I can track them against and sort of tick off as I go along. Right, I've done that, I've done that, I've done that. This is the feedback I've been given. This is where I can work. This is what I need to do to be able to work on that. And then always allowing there to be a sort of platform where feedback can be given to you too as the lead. And making sure that that it's timely and prompt. So if there is an issue, it's best spoken about as soon as it's happened, rather than letting things brew, because then other factors can impact the way that you think, and that you're going to judge an employee on their performance. So being able to give constructive feedback to your other colleagues. So I've kind of touched on this already, but really try to put yourself in their shoes and understand why they've acted in the way that they've acted. Did they have a really high level of absence that day, and were they cutting corners when they shouldn't have been? And that's why it's really important to have cross-training and cross-training in each role. Even now, I still go around to each of the departments and try to spend a day a week in each department to review processes and policies and procedures with each of the department leads, to make sure that they're constantly being given relevant feedback and feel like they're well supported as well. And also being able to it's a responsibility of our senior team to be able to take ownership of and accountability of each of their departments too. When it comes to being able to give feedback to customers and suppliers, I think we're all quite comfortable with negotiating and making sure that we can get a price on a product that's going to be workable for everyone. But also we can be put in a bit of a situation sometimes where we have to give feedback to customers that might not always sit well with them. But the end goal being that it's beneficial for both parties. So I've had experiences before where I've had to turn down customers because they're not within our remit, and I know that our service and quality of service isn't sort of comparable with what they need and the price that they want to be able to pay. We've had situations before where we've actually decided, right, we've given somebody one of our customers 6 months to turn something around. in being that they had a really low, they were a very, very large group, very well known within the industry, but they had a very, very low spend per delivery. And working it out, we weren't making anything on this customer, although that they're a large volume customer for us. And we gave them that feedback and said that we'd really like it if we could increase the spend per delivery for the sites, because we're going here, there and everywhere to be able to service you. How can we work together to be able to do that? And that was sort of ignored, and at the end of the day, we had to make that decision. Right, we don't think we can service this customer anymore. And although it came as quite a shock to them, they would have got a better offering for what they needed in another supplier. And for us, we managed to increase our efficiencies in our route planning and not impact the other 1,200 customers that we also supply, having to decrease their level of service to be able to service this one large customer. So sometimes it's evident after constructive feedback's given, and if it's not worked upon, sometimes it's sort of best to part ways in the end, which is best for both. But you shouldn't have to feel scared or nervous about upsetting somebody, because it's a business decision rather than a personal one at the end of the day. And then sort of my top tips, I suppose, for giving back feedback. So I would say to always be thankful for the feedback that you're given, because it will enhance your performance. And be thankful that you're being given a platform to give feedback to others as well, because feedback is definitely a two-way street, and you should always feel comfortable to be able to give that feedback. Always document the feedback you're given and ask for next steps in how to improve. And with constructive feedback being sort of a mentorship driven tool, you should be provided with those anyway, so there's no harm in asking for them. And then take every opportunity to learn more about the business you're working in. So I definitely wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't sort of immersed myself in every area I possibly could, sort of got my hands dirty and just had a go at anything really. And it's helped me be able to manage the team that I manage now, and give them constructive feedback on a daily basis. So I think
Thank you, Lana.
everything in it. Thank you for listening.
I'm going to open it up to some questions, but while everyone's thinking about any questions they might have, I've got a couple of my own. So how do you deal with someone who's very defensive when it comes to giving feedback? Because I guess that must be quite a common problem.
Do you know what? I don't find it happens as much with our members of the team that have grown with the business, but it is something I normally have to deal with more on a level where we've brought in sort of experts and leaders in our in each of the different departments, because I don't think that they've experienced it before. I think it's sort of like our high levels of expectations as well that that drive us to be very, very critical of what we do on a daily basis. But I suppose it's that clarity in trying to make somebody understand why it could be that you've extended somebody's probation and they're not, that they thought that they were doing the job perfectly fine. But actually there's evidence in those one-to-ones that you've had in the weeks leading up to their probationary review that that they're missing parts of the role, or they haven't had a chance yet to perform in those areas. And oh, sorry, Ella, I've lost my train of thought now.
No, that's okay.
Oh, what was I going to say? I've completely lost my train of thought.
No problem. We've got another question from Hazel while you remember. She's asking, what's the most valuable feedback you've ever received in your career?
I'm given it on a very, very regular basis. And it's that not to expect everybody else to understand things the way that I do about the business. So, and also not to expect, just because I've spoken to somebody once about something, that they're automatically going to respond straight away. Is definitely, that's probably my piece of constructive feedback that I'm given over and over again, is to not expect people to just do things because they've been asked to do something.
Exactly. Sometimes you can plant the seed, but it takes a bit longer to get the results.
Definitely.
What happens if your line manager doesn't give you feedback? They just expect you to get on with it.
Oh, I wouldn't think that that's very fair if they're not giving you feedback on how you're doing. I would definitely ask to speak about it in a more formal way. And if you're probably getting nowhere with that, I'm sure that most companies now will have sort of a HR department that they're able to approach to find out why they're not being given it, or if it's not something that is normally shared in that way. It's difficult because that's all I've always been given it. Ask. I would say ask. I always ask at the end of it, every sort of sit down I have with my team, if there's anything they need to speak to me about, or if there's any feedback they want to give me. So I don't think there's any problem in asking your line manager if you can, and have some feedback, even if it's not in a formal way, about how they think you're doing.
Yeah. Melanie says, I found it helpful to ask the manager for specific feedback or shadow a meeting to give me feedback. Brilliant. Thank you, Melanie. And Joy's asking, can you give us a spoken example of difficult... Oh, hang on a minute. Let me read this. Difficult... I'm going to just, because we've missed one question from Nikki, keen to know, what do you do to make sure that feedback is shared across the business and not just line manager to team member?
So each of our we've got, some of our teams are bigger than others. Our logistics team is the biggest team in the building, and I believe that they have a proper formal a proper review every 20 weeks based on how many drivers we've got. But everybody else in the business should have a quarterly review done at the end of each financial quarter, which is sort of like managed and ensured that happens by our HR team, and it's all sort of saved on our system. We use Bright HR. It's all documented on there, and our HR manager Sharon will be breathing down the necks of our managers if they've not given their team their reviews and their one-to-ones.
Thanks, Lana. There's more questions coming. I hope you've got the energy for another one.
No, that's okay. As well, I think the managers are probably quite keen to have their one-to-ones with their team, because they often will have KPIs and objectives set up for them to discuss for the next quarter, that they will have sort of delegated, that are part of their KPIs. So to ensure that they perform, they need to make sure that their team are fully understanding of what's expected from them as well. So it's in their best interest to make sure that they're giving their team feedback.
That makes perfect sense. This question I don't fully understand. You might make more sense of it. So it is, can you give us a spoken example of difficult feedback, which, if given incorrectly, could be considered a personal attack? So I guess Joy's question is trying to say, how do you make sure that feedback doesn't come across as personal? I think I get it.
I think if your feedback is always based on sort of analysis and data against the objectives and KPIs that you've been given, or that you've given your team, there's probably not a way it could feel like personal feedback. I've got an example, and I know that Elliot's recording this, so I won't go into names and everything like that. But we had a guy try out on an acting allowance in a role where he was going to be our commercial lead, and he'd come again sort of like come from a company where he thought that being nice to people was the way to get the most out of them, when actually I think people that are driven and ambitious want to have feedback given to them that is constructive. Certainly everybody that has progressed well at Woods here definitely takes it on board and isn't defensive about it. But he couldn't kind of grasp that, but was fully accepting himself that he probably wasn't the right person for that role and to be able to give that feedback. So in the end decided that he was given an opportunity actually on an acting allowance to step up, but it wasn't the right thing for him, and that he wasn't comfortable in being able to give that feedback because he felt like it was a personal attack on them and on the staff that he was meant to be managing. And I think that just kind of shows that people that aren't able to take it on board also aren't able to give it very well. But yeah, I don't know. I think that maybe he potentially would have thought that it was not an attack on his character, but he wasn't comfortable in the feedback that he was going to need to give his team because he didn't feel like that was part of his character. I don't know if that really makes sense or if that's a really good example or not.
It makes a lot of sense, and I think if a lot of people might be for people pleasers. I'm a people pleaser.
Yeah.
It's really hard to give feedback because you're scared about how it makes you look, and then people might not like you, but that's not in best interest of the business.
No, definitely not. And like I said, you don't have to be a yes person either. You don't have to. Being a people pleaser is not how you're going to be able to help your team perform, because you end up taking on too much yourself.
Hazel's raised a really interesting question, actually. Giving feedback on someone's presenting style can be difficult because it can often be construed as personal.
I don't know what I'd add to that, really. I'm not great on presentations myself. As you probably all just witnessed.
No, you're doing brilliantly well.
Do you know what? We're a family-run business, so for me to be able to comment on that is not really, I don't really have the experience to comment on it, to be honest with you, because we kind of do things on a small scale. We make really quick decisions, and we don't we're not necessarily in a situation where we have to. Actually, we are doing it more and more. And actually, you know what? I have given feedback on it, but it's been we have a stats meeting every month. We have a stats meeting every month, and we look at the stats from the previous month from each of the departments, and it's something we started probably about a year ago. And it's sort of grown, and again it's a learning process for us. So each month we're adapting that and giving feedback to each other on how we think that the information could be presented more clearly or better. I'm helping one of our team at the moment in his more sort of professional approach to everything, and I say to him over and over again, I'm not nagging, it's because I want you to do well and I want the business to do well, but here's your actions and this is what we need to work on. And it's that coaching and mentorship part of it. This is how I'm going to help you, rather than, I don't like the way that you're talking about that, or you're not I don't know, you're not representing the business in a good enough way because you're not speaking the Queen's English or something. It's more of a let me work on this with you sort of scenario.
Exactly. So you're reframing it in a positive way. Lana, you've been absolutely fantastic. Unless we have any more questions, does anyone have anything else they would like to ask Lana? I think we're all done. It's been
Brilliant.
brilliant to hear your story, Lana, and to learn about how much you immerse yourself into the business. And I really do think your approach to feedback is incredible and really structured and really methodical. And it's a really big part of the way you guys do business. Thank
Yeah,
you so
definitely.
much. Just
Thank you for having me,
lots and
Elliot.
lots of thank yous here from everyone.
Brilliant. If anyone I don't know, Elliot, if you want to share my contact details with everyone that joined today,
Yeah.
if they do have any more questions, or if they want a link to our Bible, because I spoke to somebody that works quite closely with the FWD last week, and she picked up a copy of Black Box Thinking and is reading it on the train at the moment. So I would definitely say one piece of advice is to read that book.
Brilliant. We'll share the book and we'll share your details.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Elliot,
Thanks
and
very
everyone that
much.
listened. Thank you.
Bye.